Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a long-lost piece of technology that kept an entire ancient society from completely falling apart just by using random luck. So go ahead and forget the grand marble steps and those long dramatic speeches for a second. We're looking at a system where a massive machine, literally made out of tubes and colored balls, was considered the absolute best, most fair way to choose a leader in the world's very first democracy. Now, think about the jarring contrast here. Today, we're so used to our modern elections, right? We picture months of exhausting campaigns, billion-dollar TV ads, heated debates, and, the classic ballot box. But the ancient Athenians, they picked their government by pulling names from what's essentially a giant stone vending machine. They used bronze tokens, tubes, and a completely random lottery. To us, that might sound like an absolute nightmare, or maybe a weird social experiment. But for them, this complicated, beautiful mess was absolutely crucial for their survival. The real heart of their whole system was built on a concept called sortition. And that simply means they relied on the luck of the draw instead of holding a traditional vote. So rather than picking whoever was the richest, the most popular, or just the loudest person in the room, they leaned entirely into the unbiased neutrality of chance. It's a completely mind-bending way to think about civic duty and political power. Okay, let's move to Section 1, the ultimate political lottery, and how they went about building the council. Athens was fundamentally divided into 10 perfectly equal tribes, and to make sure power was distributed fairly across the entire society, every single one of those 10 tribes had to provide citizens to serve. It wasn't about one dominant, wealthy faction taking total control. It was this highly balanced, mathematically structured contribution from every single corner of the state. Specifically, each of those 10 tribes had to provide exactly 50 citizens. Do the math, and boom, that's how you get their famous Council of 500. But wait, this wasn't some all-inclusive Caribbean cruise you wanted to win. It was a grueling, demanding year of government service. They needed 50 people from each tribe ready to dedicate a massive chunk of their lives to running the state. And not just anyone could be in this drawing. You had to meet some very strict criteria. You had to be an eligible male citizen, not a slave, and born to Athenian parents. If you actually checked all those boxes, you carried around a personalized bronze token. That little piece of forged metal, that was literally your physical ticket to the ultimate political drawing. Your identity, right there in your hand, ready to be entered into the lottery. Which brings us to Section 2, how the Kleroterion worked, and the mechanics of the stone vending machine. The real magic is in the machine-like precision of this three-step lottery process. Just picture a massive block of stone covered in horizontal cuts. Step 1, citizens would slide those personalized bronze tokens straight into the narrow slots. Step 2, right next to those slots was a vertical tube, where someone would pour a mix of black and white balls straight down. Step 3, they'd release the balls one by one. Whichever color popped out at the bottom decided the fate of an entire row of citizens. A white ball meant your whole row was in for a year of service. A black ball, you're out. Just like that, little colored balls determine the entire leadership of the empire. Let's dive into Section 3, securing the chaotic assembly and keeping corruption out of the mix. You have to understand, the assembly was definitely not some quiet, orderly boardroom. We're talking about a wildly chaotic gathering of over 30,000 people. Just imagine that crowd. People constantly shouting, debating, passing laws, appointing generals. Managing 30,000 highly opinionated Athenians required some serious logistical control. And honestly, it required a system that couldn't just be manipulated by a few wealthy influencers. So to make sure absolutely nobody could rig this massive system, the Athenians nominated exactly 9 presidents to oversee the assembly. But here is the absolute genius part of it. They didn't nominate them months in advance. No way. They picked these 9 presidents on the very morning of the meeting. The logic here is just beautifully simple, but incredibly effective, because these presidents were chosen at the last possible second by pure random luck. Political bribery was basically impossible. Think about it. Unlike backroom deals today that take months to put together, you couldn't buy off the leadership to steer the debate in your favor. Why? Because you simply didn't know who the leadership was going to be until the shouting was literally about to start. The randomness was a deliberate, built-in security feature. All right, moving on to Section 4, Plato versus the machine and the philosopher's critique. Now, to be completely impartial here, not everyone was a fan of this lottery of the masses. Take the famous philosopher Plato, for instance.
He thought the whole thing was completely barbaric. In his defining work, The Republic, Plato drops this incredibly heavy critique using a ship analogy. He asks, essentially, hey, you wouldn't just pick a random passenger to navigate a ship through a storm, right? You'd want a true navigator who actually knows the stars and the winds. He argued that running a state is highly technical, dangerous work. So why on earth would you hand the wheel over to a random citizen instead of a trained, proven expert? So you have Plato's ideal on one side, the philosopher king. This is someone who has dedicated their entire life to wisdom and logic, a true expert navigator for the state. And on the other side, the Athenian reality, the random citizen. To Plato, this was literally just some guy who happened to put his bronze token in the right slot on the right day when a white ball popped out. To him, relying on sheer luck instead of lifelong expertise was just a massive recipe for disaster. But let's flip it around in Section 5, the power of randomness and the Athenian ideal. On the other side of this intense philosophical debate, the Athenians had a completely different but equally powerful fear about entrenched power. Look, the Athenians weren't stupid. They knew what expertise was, but they were terrified of the alternative. They firmly believed that if you let philosophers or experts stay in power for too long, they'd become totally isolated. Prolonged power leads to arrogance, and eventually those experts start believing their ideas are the only ones that matter, effectively turning them into dictators. You know what? This fear of overreaching, entrenched rulers isn't just ancient paranoia. It's a massive structural problem we've seen from leaders all across human history. Just look at giants of history like King Hammurabi or the incredibly powerful emperors of ancient China. When power gets centralized in one expert individual or a single family line for generations, the voice of the actual people gets completely silenced. The Athenians looked at the rest of the world and said, yeah, we are absolutely not letting that happen here. So the real, absolutely crucial takeaway is this. By trusting the Kleroterion machine, the Athenians effectively guaranteed that no single individual could ever overshadow the democratic state. The machine was 100% incorruptible. It didn't care about your fancy family name, it didn't care how much gold you had, and it definitely couldn't be sweet-talked by a smooth politician. The randomness ensured that the city of Athens itself was always the ultimate authority, not the temporary individuals running it. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative question to chew on. Would our modern world actually be better off today if we ditched our ballot boxes, the endless campaigns, and the billions of dollars in ads for a giant stone machine? Or was Plato entirely right to be terrified of handing the power to start a war to your random next-door neighbor? It's pretty wild how looking at ancient mechanics can totally force us to question the very foundation of how we choose our leaders right now.